But first tonight, the story that we want to focus on in this special debate here on the news today. India's fringe, if we want to call it the fringe anymore, is running amok. Coming out with a sharp, polarizing pitch day after day. Today was a day of triple shame. First in India's commercial capital Mumbai, where out-of-control Shiv Sainiks targeted the BCCI office for trying to revive cricketing ties with Pakistan. Then the second incident took place hours later in the national capital Delhi. Controversial Jammu and Kashmir independent MLA engineer Rashid, who had organized a series of beef parties in J&K, was splattered with ink. The Hindu Sena hardline outfit claimed responsibility, even as TV channels beamed images of Rashid's face splattered with ink. 2 Hindu Sena activists have been arrested for the attack. And in Bangalore, an Australian tourist who had tattooed the image of a goddess on his leg was harassed and then forced to apologize. Those are the kind of images, ugly images of an intolerant India that we have seen across television screens today. The big question is, what is the solution? We've seen the images and we've been reporting it day after day. But today we want solutions. Is there a solution? Is the problem worse than we thought? Or is this simply keeping with the trend of recent times? Joining me now, Dipankar Gupta, Professor Dipankar Gupta, the country's leading sociologist, former professor at JNU, now with Nadar University. Shivam Vij, journalist, blogger, writer. He joins me in the studio. Anuja Chauhan, leading author and someone who's acquired fame for her best-selling books, joins me from the city of Bangalore. Netri Bhatt, she's a member of Roots in Kashmir. She joins me also today. Madhu Kishwar is professor at the Center for Studies for Developing Societies and the founder of Manushi. She has her own unique take on what is happening in the country. She will also be joining us shortly. But I want to come to you, Professor Gupta. Am I exaggerating it when I try and link these 3 issues? Because there are those who will say, look, it's not as if ink has not been splattered in the past. Cricket pitches have been dug in the past, forget about board offices. And yes, an Australian couple has been targeted for tattoos that allegedly have religious symbolism to them. But even that's happened in different forms in the past. So is this unusual what we are seeing, or is this simply par for the course?
Well, in some ways you're right. It's a continuation of what happened in the past. And as many people have complained that the Congress party didn't do enough to curb these terrible Hindu elements, from Shiv Sena right down to Ram Sena or whatever.
And there are Muslim elements too.
And the Muslim
elements
there are,
too. There are those who today will tell you, why don't you protest when Muslim groups also resort to such kind of violence and take the land? Taslima Nasreen and the Owaisi brothers case is one example.
Yeah, and then you have Salman Rushdie and the works. However, the point really is that the similarities are really quite impressive, but we are looking for dissimilarities. When it comes to that, I think there are some issues we must pay attention to. The most important being that during the Congress regime, when such things happened, Congress ministers and spokespeople kept quiet and pretended ignorance. And if that matter was drilled in the head, they say, oh really, we didn't know it. But here are the differences. Some of the prominent people in the government and in the party have said things which actually condone, if not explain, if not condone, what has happened. And this has created a new situation altogether. And then when you raise the ante by talking in terms of beef ban, and then many of the your BJP MPs and ministers and so forth say things in favor of it, you just raise the ante. For example, look what happened with engineer Rashid. Kashmir is a place where beef wasn't eaten at all. In fact, in Srinagar, it was a bit of a taboo even amongst Muslims. And though Hari Singh has started the whole thing, the constituent, elected governments of J&K didn't really encourage beef eating. Now, all of this is also a way of, as you said, Muslim point of view. All of this on the Muslim side also is kind of creating a situation where both Hindu activists and Muslim activists are feeding into each other, and the pace has been set by those Hindus out here who are getting away without being punished. And worst part is that some of those who are in government are not coming out unequivocally against it, giving the feeling that they are on their side.
And that's interesting, because the engineer Rashid case has taken place on a day when there has been a Bandh in Kashmir. The Bandh was organized by local groups because they were angry at the manner in which a Kashmiri trucker died in violence that took place in Jammu, because 3 carcasses of cows were found. It was feared at the moment that it was cow slaughter. Later on it was found it was not. But the man died as a result. Are you fearing, though, as you said, there are Hindu and Muslim extreme groups which are now almost, we keep calling them fringe groups. How long am I going to call groups which are going to occupy the headlines in some form or the other, fringe group? Are these fringe groups occupying the space at the center, which perhaps is being vacated by the so-called liberal voices of tolerance and coexistence?
Well, the liberal voices of tolerance and coexistence were really very marginal, for a long, long time. You mentioned cow slaughter and what didn't turn out to be cow slaughter. I'm reminded of what happened in Jhajjar. I think it was 2002 or sometime like that, around that time. Now,
when a Dalit family was attacked, unfortunately, because they were killed because they were allegedly engaged in the cow slaughter trade, and then it was found that was not the case.
That's true. That happened just a decade back, or a little more than a decade back. Now, in this particular case, what I think is happening is that the BJP and people and parties which are close to the BJP have not been in power for a very, very long time. And they have all these pent-up ambitions, within the rank and file. At last they've found their voice and they want to express all of that. Now, this happens very often in ideological parties that have been kept outside for a long while, who have been kind of knocking on the door with their noses pressed against the glass and not really getting in. Now, once they're in, it's very difficult to contain the rabid puritanical elements within this organization. It happened with the communists too. When the communists first came to power, the very hardcore orthodox Marxists were a bit of a problem and an embarrassment, in fact. Over time, as the left governments became more and more routinized, so did these other people. Likewise, I think perhaps in the long run, once the BJP is able to take control of things, in a year or two, perhaps they'll be able to control these elements. But a lot depends on whether or not they're able to do right now, control their MPs and MLAs from saying the wrong things at the wrong times. They begin the day with the mouth wide open, the rest of the time they're biting their tongue.
So essentially you're suggesting that these groups have got emboldened. They believe they can get away with it. That's an Hindu Sena activist perhaps.
No, they always got away with it. Here they seem to have an ideological rationale and support for what they're doing.
So that's even when the Congress regimes were there, they would get away with it, but today they believe they have an ideological rationale, or they believe that they have the overt support, not just the covert support of the government in power. That's at least in ideological terms.
True.
On the other hand, Shivam, is that we are seeing what is happening even on the social media. On the social media, which is playing an increasingly disproportionate role, some would say, in amplifying the surround sound. You have essentially campaigns which are getting more and more polarized. Let me give you an example. For the last few days, I have been deluged with tweets saying that there is an individual called Pujari who has been killed in Mangalore, in Udupi, near Mangalore, because he was a Bajrang Dal activist, and he has been killed by members of the Popular Front because he was protesting against the cattle trade. Why are you not taking up his cause in the manner that you took up an Akhlaq's cause in Dadri? So it's almost as if you're pitting Hindu versus Muslim. Is this also part of the problem, that the social media, which is playing this disproportionate role in amplifying the sound, wants to create this polar opposites of Hindu versus Muslim? Is the social media playing a particularly pernicious role at this moment of time?
No, I think if social media, organizer, the events on the ground, all of them have a similar pattern, which is that offense is being manufactured. People are desperate to get offended and therefore take to violence. In so many of these cases, the chain is that there are rumors that it's beef, the rumors is cow meat, but it is not. So rumors are deliberately spread so that people get offended and people take to violence. And that, as Dipankar Gupta said, basically intellectual and political cover is being provided for this atmosphere, and for that social media, as much as Panjani or organizer are. But
I could argue, why is the so-called secularists silent? Are they silent because the scale of the victory that Narendra Modi and the BJP achieved in 2014 has pushed them so much on the defensive that barring, which is why what the Sahitya Akademi Award winners have done in a strange sort of way, we could perhaps accuse them, why didn't they speak out earlier? Why didn't they speak out when Taslima Nasreen happened, satanic? But are they in a sense filling up this vacuum, this voice which for the last 16 months has not been heard, of people questioning what is happening on the ground.
What will these writers do when things get much worse? They've already returned their award. What will they do now?
Right.
You know,
right.
I think the problem is that the secularists and left liberals have been marginalizing themselves because they're afraid of mass communication. They don't like Twitter. They don't like to be trolled and abused like you. They don't know how to master the medium. When a Sahitya Academy Award winner called Chetan Bhagat Bazaru, what he means is that unlike Chetan Bhagat, he does not want to engage with the masses. He doesn't want to be a bestseller. So if the secularists and left liberals marginalize themselves in their avant-garde position that we are this cultural elite, we will not speak in language of masses, be it Twitter or popular fiction, then how will they communicate and how will they make an impact?
Let's put it this way. You did your thesis, a remarkable thesis on the Shiv Sena. And that was in the early 70s. Sometimes do you feel when you see these images, for example, that nothing is, it's almost that time has frozen.
I know.
From 1970s to 2015 time, and the police was standing by.
Yes.
There was no sign of the police acting. The police, in fact, I saw in one shot were opening the gate of the BCCI. They entered the room.
Yes.
And I wrote this, and I'm wondering from you, taking off from what Shivam said, Mumbaikars are silent. Are they silent out of fear? Are they silent because they feel that maybe the Shiv Sena has a point of view when they oppose the Indo-Pak matches, and maybe they're a loudspeaker of popular grievances? Or has it over time, as I said, these extreme groups now occupying the center stage? The Shiv Sena today is in government in Maharashtra. It's not a fringe party.
Well, it's been in government for some time, I think. But
in Maharashtra,
yes,
it's been over the last 12 months.
Yeah, the municipality in Bombay.
In the municipality it has.
But you see, when Krishna Desai was murdered,
yes,
Bal Thackeray stood up and said publicly that one Lal Bhai is dead, many more will die. You know, things like that, and he got away with it. Nothing happened. Mrs. Indira Gandhi, during the emergency, lots of parties were, put away, but she allowed the Shiv Sena to flourish because there was some advantage for her in that. So, as you said quite rightly, the past seems to be replaying itself again and again over all these years. The secularists, however, I would like to make a point of dissension here, because who are the secularists? I think I am also a secularist. You are a secularist. Shivam is a secularist. Have we been quiet? We've always come to your shows. We've written in newspapers and so forth. When you talk of secularists, maybe you mean certain people who were professionally Congress secularists. And they too have been speaking up from time to time. So I'm not really sure. But the real problem is this, that a true secular person is one who does not agree with, who is a person who only believes that whatever is proven to that person is true, not what is told to the person. Now, if for example, I'm told by whoever is an authority, a secular authority, that this is true, and I believe it, I'm not a secular person. So in my view, when we lambast secularism, secular people, we're probably doing an injustice, because some secular people have stood up all through, even during the last 16 months.
But I'm again going to ask you in the context of the Shiv Sena. Over the last 48 years, while Bal Thackeray has occupied, or the Thackeray's have occupied this popular imagination in Mumbai that they run the show, yeah, how many people, isn't it the same usual suspects who stand up every time and take them on? How many celebrities in Mumbai, for example, how many cricketers? Let's put it, today a cricket office has been stormed. In 1991, a cricket pitch was dug up. How many cricketers, Mr. Gupta, have come out and openly said what the Shiv Sena is doing is wrong? We protest against it. I'm trying to struggle to recall the name of one cricketer who has taken on the Shiv Sena in these years.
How many cricketers, how many film stars, how many corporate people?
That's what I'm asking.
No, but you say their job is, well,
they're not secularists, but they are people whom people are role models.
Yeah, role models, but they're role models for being cricketers and businessmen, not for being secular people, not for being intellectuals.
Sir, but if a Sachin Tendulkar today stood up, Mr. Gupta, and said that what has happened in the Mumbai Cricket Association is wrong, at least it would perhaps embolden those who believe that the Shiv Sena doesn't have the right or a veto power to decide whether an Indo-Pak cricket match takes place.
When I'm an ordinary citizen, I'm not sure if the government will support me when these rabble-rousers get after me. I'm going to be silent. It's when I'm confident of the fact that I'll be protected by the government, by the state authorities, it's only then I speak up. If I'm not sure of that, I will not speak
lack
up.
of courage in a country where people
are you saying it's lack of courage? Are you saying saying that the Sachin Tendulkars or the Lata Mangeshkars are showing a lack of courage, or have they also got co-opted? They also, in a sense, we spoke about industrialists, for example, in Mumbai. Many of them have Shiv Sena unions. We've spoken about film stars. Many of them used to get the Thackeray's for their film Mahurats. Cricketers also have had very close relationships with the Thackeray. So my argument is, today when I see these scenes in the BCCI, is it because the law enforcement machinery in Mumbai has failed, or is it because Mumbai has simply failed to speak up when it should have?
That's true. Mumbai has never spoken up. It should have, except when the attack took place on Taj Hotel that time. I think at that time the Mumbaikars were exemplary in what they did.
So, but that was because it was the Lashkar-e-Toiba. When it's the Lashkar-e-Toiba 2611, you could outrage about it.
Yeah, but
I'm not likening the Shiv Sena by any stretch of imagination to the Lashkar. But violence itself, sir.
It was not the Lashkar. But the people who came out in Bombay that time, you'll remember, were people of all religions.
So why do they come out now?
Yeah, but you see,
why don't they come out against the Shiv Sena's?
Remember, two girls wrote on Facebook when Bal Thackeray died about why do we need a band like
and
this.
And they weren't protected.
And their uncle's office was vandalized and they were jailed under 66A. There is, in Bombay, there's a genuine fear, there's a sense that we've lost the game. In Delhi, we haven't. And I'm very glad that the Delhi government is holding a Ghulam Ali concert in defiance of the Shiv Sena diktat. And the Shiv Sena is threatening to attack the concert in Delhi as well on the 8th of November, right? I think it's important sometimes to bully back the bully. Otherwise, you get bullied to silence, you marginalize yourself, and they become from fringe to center.
You know, before I take a break, are you convinced when you see these images that has the bully, to use the word, now come on center stage and believes his time has come or their time has come? You said you linked it to the fact that they believe in some way that ideologically at least, the government in power, they have an affinity with it. So therefore they can get away with it. But in Karnataka, there is a Congress government. In Jammu and Kashmir, yes, the BJP is a power sharing. In Delhi today, where this incident has happened, there is an Aam Aadmi Party government. Is it about government, or is it generally no fear of the rule of law? The belief that, at best, I'll get my few minutes of publicity on TV and then I'll get bail the next morning.
You see, if you look at the last nearly 70 years, at least the last 60 years, you'll find that whenever these people have done whatever they do, nothing really happens to them. Because there's this feeling that these people actually represent the heart and soul of India. And that is the mistake that Democrats make. Democrats feel that they should represent this heart and soul instead of training them and instead of protecting the citizens against those people. This is the main problem. So you may be a secular person, but you want to win the next election, and you think that Shiv Sena and organizations like that have a certain rapport with the people which I would like to exploit. And that is the beginning of your end. And this is why I think over a long period of time, these so-called fringe elements have got so much publicity and protection from different political parties. Today, they look even larger than what they did earlier, simply because they're MPs and MLAs in government who are finding ways and means of condoning what they had done. In the past, as I told you, they kept quiet. They said, all right, wait for a while, we are fighting this cause, don't go to the hands of BJP and RSS, they're going to make matters worse. But really speaking, the politicians believe that these fringe elements are actually speaking for what is the Indian soul, a Hindu soul. And they're absolutely wrong, including ban on cow slaughter, by the way.
Okay. Very interesting, very wise. Let me take a break on that point, because it's interesting to we are trying to examine why this culture of intolerance exists and then trying to look for solutions. We want to try and look for solutions. Is there a way? Will people stand up to those who use the might of who believe in muscle power, who believe in the cult of violence, who believe that you cannot have an argument without in some way engaging in muscle flexing? Who will call the bluff of the bullies? That's the question we want to raise. We are reflecting on this culture of intolerance and raising the big question. What is the solution that you find out for it? Dipankar Gupta and Shivam Vijay in the studios, but I'm joined at the moment by Madhu Kishwar as well to give an alternative perspective. Madhu Kishwar, we've been looking at this entire issue on this day when there have been these three shameful incidents. And the one thing that appears to connect all three in a sense is the growing belief that people can get away with it. And there are those who will rationalize it in ideological terms, perhaps on social media, perhaps on traditional media. How do you respond that bullies are now getting a sense of empowerment which they perhaps didn't have in the past? Yes, the Congress tolerated it. Yes, the Congress governments didn't, perhaps even in some ways tacitly encourage parties like the Shiv Sena. But now these parties are emboldened because they know they have ideological support at the very top.
Did you ask me, Rajdeep?
Yes, ma'am.
Rajdeep, I'm so amazed. I mean, having grown up in India and in Delhi all my life, I'm amazed that you think something very unusual is happening. I know, for example, every time there were large-scale killings, be it Meerut riots, be it Muzaffarnagar, be it Delhi 1984, whole communities stopped talking to each other. Hindus and Sikhs weren't talking to each other. I remember when I started visiting gurdwaras in those days, I was one of the first ones to Hindus to have gone there because people had become so suspicious of each other. And we are behaving as if something very unusual is happening. I think 3 new things have happened which are creating this phobia about intolerance. Number 1, earlier, only select few had the right and the access to media and to express their opinions in the public domain. So if Rajdeep Sardesai or Madhukishwar wrote an article, people couldn't get back at us. Now they do so instantly and they tell us what they think of us. Very ordinary people, and they celebrate us if they think we said something nice or sensible, and they bash us if they think we didn't do it right or didn't meet with their expectations. So we're not used to having ordinary people talk back at us. And I think the elite is feeling extremely threatened. Secondly, with due respect to you, because you are an exceptional, which is the most intolerant place today in all of India? These are our TV studios and some of our TV anchors. They don't let you finish a sentence. They snap at you, they yell, they scream, and they get so upset and hysterical if you differ with them. You don't do that, Rajdeep, but you know who I'm talking about. And that tribe is growing. TV studios have become such a hostile territory for sanity that, you know, we are creating that hysterical atmosphere. And if TV stars and media stars and intellectuals
Ma'am, let's move on.
Start doing that.
Third point. You said 3 points.
Right.
What's your third point?
The third point that I'm trying to see, when one sign of intolerance is mayhem on the streets. We are lucky we have these very sad, tragic stray incidents, which everybody is condemning. And those who are justifying are getting a good battering. Nobody is letting them get away with justifying murder. But these are stray incidents.
Ma'am, hold on. You know, your first 2 points were strong points, but the third one of calling these stray incidents, at the end of the day, the fact is that what the Shiv Sena is doing, it's a party in government, ma'am. It's a party in government in Maharashtra, which at the moment last week blackened someone's case, the week before that stopped a music concert, now wants to stop Indo-Pak cricket. The fact is that engineer Rashid, just a minute, ma'am. You say these are stray incidents. Engineer Rashid's face is blackened on a day when Kashmir has a bandh over an individual who was wrongly killed, who was killed in terrible circumstances, again over a rumor over 3 dead carcasses of cows. The fact is, an Australian couple had a tattoo and they were harassed and they were intimidated because allegedly sentiments were offended. Now, you can call these as stray incidents, but there is a pattern where people seem to believe they are emboldened and can get away with it. I'm not saying it's not happened in the past. The Shiv Sena has got away with it in the past. But the fact is, you can't call it stray. You can't call government.
I'm going to raise another point.
Yes.
In the late 70s and 80s, it was very common for women's groups led by left parties to blacken faces of wife beaters, drunkards. They would be paraded on donkeys. It was so celebrated. I mean, in Manushi we published so many articles coming from feminists, leftists, of all these vigilante actions against daruga addas, against husbands who came home drunk and they would be paraded, their faces blackened. Liquor shops would be vandalized by women. Remember the Andhra anti-liquor agitation and how women went on a rampage? It was celebrated as militancy. And today, one person whose face is black, and I condemn it. But I'm saying, don't forget, we romanticize some of these forms of protest when certain other political groups.
So you're saying you believe this entire culture of intolerance therefore has been exaggerated. You believe it's been exaggerated?
On the contrary, there is more space, Rajdeep,
okay,
today
you believe
for
there
the
is more
ordinary
space.
citizen
Okay. Let me
talk back to power.
It can talk back to power. Okay, Anuja Chauhan, author, also joining me from Bangalore. Anuja, do you agree with that? That actually Netri Bhatt, who's a blogger and a member of Roots in Kashmir, joined. Do you agree with Madhu Kishwar that what has happened today to engineer Rashid? I may be fulminating in the studio believing that a man has been attacked in an unacceptable way.
I somehow...
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Looking at the background of the person, and I do go with Madhu Kishwar ji, whatever she has so-called said till now. I do condemn the whole kind of procedure that has gone. But yes, whatever Madhu Kishwar ji has said is actually correct. If we look at the past and we go through the historical things of all these, we go by the history of whatever the setup has been there, I guess this is quite okay with the kind of personality that person is.
No, hold on. Are we saying, no, this is an interesting,
scenario, how it has been till now.
Just a minute. Dipankar Gupta, let's look at the way it's being positioned now. Engineer Rashid is a controversial figure. He organized a beef party. Some say it was a deliberately provocative act, so he's been asking for it. Many will say that was also the case with Sudhindra Kulkarni. Last week, you organized a book release of Khurshid Kasuri, knowing that the Shiv Sena will be angered by it. How do you respond to this? Because this is the new narrative which is also run, that you are asking for it. And then you go back in history. Because people will say when Kashmiri Pandits were driven away from the from refugee camp, why didn't you speak out then? Why you only... So there is a narrative which is also troubling at one level.
I don't think you can hold that for Sudhindra Kulkarni.
Right.
Let us say, for argument's sake, that
yes.
Mean by this, is that all okay with you?
No, just a minute, ma'am.
That engineer Rashid really wanted to stand out in the limelight and come forward as the agent provocateur. Let's assume that. What we cannot, however, explain away is the fact that this person wasn't given any protection. That is a job of the police. I may be a madcap, I may do strange things, but I have to be, the others who may face my wrath or my angularities, they have to be protected. I remember this point came up in America once, when a person, a very well-known Sikh author, wrote a book, and other Sikhs protested and didn't want the book to be sold, and they had a sit-in around the shop. I asked one of them that, don't you believe that this is undemocratic? And you know what he said? He said that author has every right to write a book, I have every right to protest, as the president of the university who should protect the author. Now this is what I'm going to say. Whatever Rashid may have done, it is the job of the state to protect people. I think Rashid didn't act wisely. For example, in our university some time back, a dog was skinned and eaten by somebody, supposedly a white dog. And secularists in my campus wanted that person's PhD or MPhil to be revoked. I mean, talking of Sahitya to be, awards being given away. Now, if you're going to do something stupid like that, like hosting a beef party.
You're saying that Rashid was deliberately provocative. Do you believe Rashid was deliberately provocative?
Regardless, I think it's important in a democracy to say the man has the right to have a beef party.
He has the right to have a beef party.
There's nobody in India willing to say that these days.
Madhu Kishwar, are you not worried? While you make some very good points at the start, aren't you not worried that the narrative that you're leading towards, in a sense, will rationalize this kind of behavior? Saying, look, why didn't secularists speak up when satanic verses were banned in India? Why didn't you speak up when Taslima Nasreen was attacked by the Owaisi? So therefore, today's India is to be held, in a sense, responsible for our failures of the past. And that's a very dangerous logic. Don't you see where that is leading us, Madhu Kishwar, at the moment? Particularly because it's being seen through this Hindu-Muslim prism.
Rajdeep, I'm the last person to ever justify hooliganism, no matter what the provocation, and no matter how deeply my sentiments may be hurt. So that's the bottom line. I'm not justifying it. All I'm trying to say to you is the following. For example, I couldn't release my book because India International Center cancelled my book on Modi because it was perceived as pro-Modi. No publisher would touch my book because they said such books don't have a market. You had to be a Modi basher in order to get a mainstream publisher to get you taken seriously. I've gone through so much censorship, and I don't think I have ever acted.
Are you saying these acts are? Are you saying, ma'am, just a minute. Are you saying these acts are a response to the so-called tyranny of the secularists? That the secularists have had a tyranny over public discourse. They've had a tyranny of over democratic debate, and now this is a reaction from below. Is that what you're suggesting?
Firstly, they outrage very selectively. And they don't put things in perspective. A blackening of a face versus genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. No outrage for one and huge, humongous outrage for the other. Secondly, please remember, Rajdeep, you should remember, we are of the same generation. This blackening of face, parading people on donkeys used to be very popular mode of protest by leftists,
ma'am, these are not protests.
Rural movements.
Now it's no longer about protest.
Glorificatory articles were written. I don't justify it even then.
Ma'am, you know, you today raised, and I thought you would. I know that you feel deeply about the issues in Kashmir. You know what we know, and we empathize with what happened to Kashmiri Pandits. But let's not forget, 95% of those who died in the militancy of Kashmir are Muslims. So we can again, you know, we can go down a very slippery slope. We can go down a very, very slippery slope if we start now comparing your riot versus my riot. You know, it's a very slippery slope.
I have taken up the legal cases of Kashmiri Muslims. I have stood
I am just therefore saying it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. Once we start competitive outrage and competitive intolerance, it's a slippery slope, ma'am.
Rajdeep, I have even taken up legal aid cases of secessionists, Kashmiri secessionists, okay? Because those who didn't commit murder, but they had other cases, I've even helped those. So I don't need to prove my credentials that I will go down that slope. I know my Lakshman Rekha. The point that I'm trying to make is, if you do selective outrage, if you blow things out of proportion, and as I said, the example being set in TV studios today, you know, the voices that are dominating, the manner in which certain anchors who have become the big stars of the show
there's no lynching in TV studios. There's no throwing violence in TV studios.
Yeah, okay.
No, but I'm sorry, the words that are used, you don't let people finish. You get hostile. I don't mean Rajdeep. But there are, you know who I'm referring to, who has said that.
Ma'am, look, ma'am, my request is, I think you make a good point that there is a certain gladiatorial atmosphere which has been created even in television studios. However, nothing can quite explain the manner in which people are saying their sentiments are being heard and therefore taking the law into their own hands. I want to give 30 seconds in conclusion to Dipankar Gupta. Is there a sense, therefore, from what Madhu Kishwar also says, that look, everyone's going to have to wake up. The secular class of this country, all secular elites as they are now being called, a liberal elite has to wake up, much as those who are the so-called fringe have to wake up and find some kind of a new compact to work with each other. This cannot go on.
Do you know the one compact that can really work is the observance of law and order? That is the only compact. Nothing else will work.
So that's the minimum. That's the common minimum program. Yes. Have your differences, but a common minimum program is respect for law and order.
Law and enforcement.
Okay.
And because law and order wasn't enforced adequately in the past, that certain groups became kind of solidified and institutionalized, even though they were on the fringe. And that is the sort of sins of the past that we are paying for today.
Okay. We're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave it at that. Dipankar Gupta, Shivam Vij, Madhu Kishwar, and Ms. Bhatt, who we were not able to get through early enough. I appreciate all of you joining us. The culture of intolerance. I think we've got the solution. The solution is we are asking today on India Today TV for a common minimum program. It's based on a respect for law and order. You have your differences, please express them. But you have to express them within the boundaries of the law, and those who break it must face punishment of the severest kind, and it must be demonstrated in front of all so that it becomes exemplary. I appreciate all of you joining us.